Okay.
Go.
All right, so we're going to talk about the respiratory system. And
That's
this is a
very
picture of some
important.
cow lungs. These two people are
Oh,
inflating
you're gonna
with
pop
air.
it.
That's
Check
gonna
that
be
out.
weird,
Look at how big those
Right,
things
hold
actually
up.
get. Our pig lungs won't be nearly that
Okay.
size.
Go.
Um,
So
but it's impressive just how flexible
that's
lungs are.
very
They're flexible
important.
because otherwise you can't keep air in and out of them.
Oh, you're gonna pop
Now, I know
it.
most of you
That's
guys
gonna be
probably think of the
right.
lungs as like
Right,
a big
hold up.
sack. They're not really a sack. We're going to cut open a
Go.
piece of lung tissue today,
So
and when you look inside, it actually looks a lot more like a
that's
sponge
very
than it does like a bag,
important.
which is partly why
Oh,
when you do
you're gonna
things like
pop
manage your
it.
That's
lungs
gonna
with
be
vaping and smoking,
Right,
you
hold up.
can't fix it. You can't go in there and clean it out because it's clogged up for
Okay.
good.
Go.
Okay,
So
so really consider that before you do that to yourself.
that's very
So let's dive in
important.
here. Today is one of the,
Oh,
I
you're
guess,
gonna pop
probably one of the gross parts is going to be breaking the jaw of the pig. Okay? This is step one when we get downstairs. What you're going to do is you're going to take your scalpel. You can use scissors too. Try not to cut into any bones, but you're going to cut between the bones on the jaw. So cut downwards a good ways, probably further than you think you need to cut, on both sides of the pig. Make him smile. Okay? Then what you need to do, and this is the gross part, you're going to stick your thumb, not your finger like in this picture, all the way in towards the back of the throat, and the other thumb all the way in towards the back of the throat. Grab a hold, watch out, there's teeth in there, and pull. Okay? Pull hard enough, you're going to hear it break and crack. You're going to keep pulling until this little flap inside pops up. That's the epiglottis. You'll see it looks like a tiny little itsy bitsy little tongue. It's going to pop up, and you'll know you've gone far enough. Don't keep pulling until you rip the lower jaw off. Okay? We want the lower jaw still attached, but pull until it pops, and you see the little thing pop up. Okay? After you get that open, we're going to label the parts inside, and I want you to see them. They're a little difficult to see on the diagram in your lab because there's a lot of openings back there, and they're all kind of clustered together right in the same location. But I'll go through and point them out to you if you get them confused by trying to fill this out here. So here's most of the inside of the jaw of the mouth region of the pig. The nares are up there to the right. Those are the openings that air can go in, right? It's right in your lab. It's like the first page there. Okay. So your nares are here. And then the roof of your mouth. The roof of your mouth is called your hard palate. And if you push your tongue up against it, it's hard. You can feel it. If you keep pushing your tongue back in your throat and pushing up against the roof of your mouth, you might just be able to feel the part where it gets soft. That's the soft palate. So the hard palate helps you to manipulate food, right? And even the pig's got some ridges there to help grind it up some. The soft palate helps you swallow it down. Okay, so that continues back into the throat a little bit. And it will be softer. You'll feel it. The next thing down on your diagram, but not on this picture, I'll show you another picture of it, is called the nasopharynx. Okay? So we're going to kind of come back to that when it goes up and out the nares. Then there's going to be an esophageal opening, an esophagus right there, which is a tube that's going to lead to, where's the esophagus lead? Anybody know? Does it lead to your lungs? No, esophagus leads to your stomach, right? So there's a stomach opening there. This leads to the stomach, and there's also an opening that's going to lead to your lungs. The one that leads to your lungs is called the glottis. Okay? See that little tongue-shaped thing right there? That's the epiglottis. When you see that little thing pop up, you know you've gone far enough with pulling on the mouth of the pig. So if I slip a probe down in there, it's like a hollow tube on this side. It's like a curled around tube. That probe would eventually go all the way down into the trachea and down into the lungs. Okay, so there's a couple openings back here. There's 3 openings back here in the back of the throat. And we'll look at them more in detail here in just a second. And of course the tongue, that's easy enough, right? So, everybody have those? Okay, here's another picture. So make it a little bit easier. So let's see if you can remember the ones that we just did. What are these up here? Those are the nares, that's right. What is this part right here? That's the hard palate. And this one? Soft palate. And then the little flapper there, oops, I went too fast, is the epiglottis, okay? Behind the epiglottis, you can now see what's called the nasopharynx. Do you see that little half moon darkened black shape right there? That's the opening to the nasopharynx. Now, it doesn't go straight back. It doesn't go down. It actually goes behind both the palates. Watch this, guys, so you see, because this is confusing. It goes behind both the palates, soft and hard, and comes out the nose, out the rostrum there, right out the nares. Ever started laughing and like accidentally shot milk or soda out your nose before? Okay. What happened is you had it in your mouth and you started laughing and didn't send it down your esophagus. Instead, you shot it through your nasopharynx across over the soft and hard palate and right out your nose. Okay? Now, have you ever been drinking water before and suddenly started choking on it? Yeah, I'm sure we've all experienced that. What happens in that situation is this little epiglottis here, that little flapper, it fails to close over and cover up the glottis. So that thing's in charge of covering the opening to your lungs. If it doesn't close right, then you hear people say, oh, someone went down the wrong pipe. It did. It went down the pipe to your lungs rather than the pipe to your stomach. And so that's why you start coughing and you cough it up. It doesn't go very far. It's not going all the way into your lungs, hopefully. And then what's this last one? See here. That's the tongue, yeah. Okay. We'll look at another picture here. This is kind of a little more destroyed, but it's very hard to show these openings without this. So let's roll through these again. What part is this right here? Number 1, hard palate, and that makes number 2 the soft palate. Number 3 is the opening. It's the bigger opening, and now that the jaw is really ripped away, you can see it. It doesn't go in. It goes up towards the nose behind all these palates. Remember what that one's called? It's going to come out the nose, out the nasal area. So we might call it the nasopharynx, right? So on your diagram that you're looking at, the first big opening you come to is the nasopharynx on your diagram. As we keep going down from the nasopharynx, we're going to hit another opening. And it's very hard to see on your pig. Okay, you've really got in there, get in there to see it. We'll push a probe down it. But number 4 here is pointing to the tube that you can't really even see in this picture, leads down to your stomach. What's that one called? One that leads to your stomach. Esophagus. So on your diagram, the next one down from the larger nasopharynx is the esophagus, the esophageal opening. Okay, the next 2 are a little confusing. They're pretty similar. Number 5 here is actually labeling the opening that goes down into your trachea. What's that opening called? Number 6 is the flapper, and what's number 5 called? Number 5 is the... Okay, it's real close. The epiglottis is the flap. What does it cover? The glottis. Yep. Okay. So it's hard to see on your paper, but the thing that says opening, that opening that's on that little tongue-shaped thing is the glottis. And the tongue-shaped thing itself, which in this picture is flipped way far forward, is the epiglottis. So the epiglottis covers the glottis. Super hard stuff here. Okay. Going through it again, the nasopharynx is the big opening, goes out the nares. The esophagus is the opening that goes to your stomach. Then right past that and tucked into the epiglottis is the glottis, which goes to your lungs. Pretty easy, right? Okay, oh, number 7, of course, is the tongue. Okay, let's look down in here a little bit further. After you get this dissected and you call me over and we look at all the parts, I'm going to let you move on to the next step. Okay? The next step starts with scissors. Don't use your scalpel on this next step because we have to cut through bone. Okay? This is going to look a little bit new to you because you haven't seen this part. This is the chest cavity. We've dissected the abdominal cavity. So you already cut the pig right up to the diaphragm here. And you stopped at the diaphragm. Remember, you could just see that little flap of muscle? What does the diaphragm do for you? It's so you can breathe. Yep. That muscle moves and it allows you to breathe. The diaphragm separates the 2 cavities. Up here in the chest cavity, there would be a large organ sitting right here between the lungs. What organ would that be? The heart. We're not going to remove the heart today, so you won't see some of this. We will eventually remove the heart and dissect the heart. But there's going to be a big heart sitting right here in a pericardial membrane. It'll be in a sac. So we'll get to that. But you will see the lungs today. There is a left lung and a right lung. It's Piggy's left and Piggy's right, not your right and left. Get it? So one over there is the left and the one over there is the right lung. That's on your diagram on the next page. Now, leading into the lungs, there's two branching pieces. Okay? These are called the bronchial tubes. There's a left bronchus and a right bronchus. That's on your diagram too. Okay? You can label it. So you can just see this one right here. The other one I think has been clipped. It might have been. It may be underneath of there. So there's two tubes that branch off here from your windpipe. Okay? And your windpipe is called your trachea. Now I want you to notice the structure of the trachea. It's very cartilaginous. It's going to be stiff and rigid. It's like a rigid pipe. And there's all these little ribs along it. Once you clean off the connective tissue, you'll see all these little ribs. It's very different than the esophagus. The esophagus is not on your diagram today because the esophagus is part of what system? Not respiratory, digestive, yeah. So where does it really sit? The way it's going to sit in the pig is that the trachea is going to be on top of the esophagus. So you have to push it off to the side and there'll be some tissue kind of connecting it. But the esophagus is really soft and flexible because food's got to go down it, right? The windpipe, the trachea, is really rigid. It's got to be kind of structurally sound so the air can go through it. Have you ever heard of somebody who's had a tracheotomy? Anybody who talks and has to hold their hand over their throat? Who breathes through their throat? Yeah, now you know what I'm talking about. So that happens, for instance, if you get throat cancer, so don't chew tobacco, it's really bad. Don't smoke, it's really bad. What they have to do is down here, they have to cut a hole right through your neck, and they put in a port. And you breathe out of that port because the rest of your stuff there is all completely damaged. Now, when you want to talk, when you want to make noise, you have to plug that hole up. Because in order to make noise, you have to pass the air over your vocal cords. Your vocal cords are hidden in what some of you call your voice box. You can feel this hard lump right here. Okay? That's called the larynx. The larynx is the lump right there in the throat, and inside the larynx are the vocal cords. Today we're going to cut open the larynx and look in there so we can see the vocal cords. See the squealer on the pig. Okay, you vibrate that. So for a person who has to breathe out their throat like that, they have to close that hole up so they can push air over their vocal cords to talk. Okay, everybody got those parts? Good. Good, good, good. Let's try it again here. What's A, that lump? The larynx, good. And then what's B here? That's the trachea. And just behind it, you can actually see the esophagus. See that to the right there? And then C, this branching part? Bronchus, yep. And then, of course, D, that's easy. It's the lungs. And today I want you to cut a little piece of lung off. Don't hack a whole lung off, but cut a chunk of lung off and look in there. It's going to be very spongy. And then what's the muscle down here that's pointing to? Diaphragm. Probably be on the test and it won't look like much because let's say I have a flap of skin, right? But its location is a dead giveaway. Okay. Now let's look at some vocal cords. This is not a pig. This is actually a cat. I couldn't find a good picture of the pig's vocal cords. So this right here is the trachea. Okay. And then the larynx has been cut completely alongside right here. It's been cut open. And you can see the two little flaps of cartilage looking stuff here. As those vibrate when the air goes through there, it makes noises. So there's the vocal cords. That's how the kitty purrs, or the piggy squeals, or people talk. Right? Okay, last one. Let's turn to that picture that we have of the person. This is a little tough. We want to try and outline these parts here. Okay. I think on your diagram, the nasal chamber is already labeled there. The nose is labeled. But what are the openings there by the nose? What are those called? Yeah, nares or nostrils. Whichever one you want to use is fine. Those are your nares or your nostrils. Okay. Now looking at the part that you colored in, the roof of the mouth here, the part that's more forward on the roof of the mouth, what's that? the roof of the mouth. Hard palate, and the part that's further back on your diagram is the soft palate. It's not labeled on my diagram here. Okay. Got that? So those 2 marks on your paper there. Of course, the teeth are labeled on your diagram. You don't need to label those. But if we look inside the mouth, what's that piece of meat that you flap around in there called? That's the tongue. So you can label that on your diagram, pointing to it there. Okay. Then let's look right about right here on your diagram. It just says opening. Okay. It's the part that leads up and out your nose. What's that opening called? Yep, the nasopharynx. Or if you just want to abbreviate pharynx, that's fine. It's right up there on there. They label it a little further down. Okay. Then there's a little flap that they didn't label in this picture. What's the little flapper called? Epiglottis. You can see it dangling off in your picture there. That's the epiglottis. And then we have 2 openings to label. Okay. One opening goes to your stomach, and that's called the what? Esophagus. Good. It's not on the picture up there because it's the respiratory system. And the other opening goes to your lungs, and that's called the trachea. Yep. And you can see it there just past the larynx. Pretty easy stuff, right? And then there's going to be some questions there and some things to diagram. I've already talked about most of them, but we're going to get ready to head down to lab and do this dissection.